Welcome to the Truth Uncovered channel. Today, we dive into the horrifying case of a swinging couple that didn't return home from their lustful trip. This is a story of pleasure, intrigue, and broken trust. Our story starts on March 6, 2010. A luxurious cruise ship sails through the turquoise waters of the Caribbean. It's a haven for couples looking to indulge in hedonistic pleasures, where the air is thick with the scent of tropical flowers and the promise of secret rendezvous. But what begins as a week of freedom and fantasy ends in a nightmare that rocks the serene paradise. Ethan and Lily Parker stood on the deck of the Tropical Escape, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. It was March 1st, 2010, the first day of their much-anticipated vacation. They had heard about the ship's reputation for offering a unique experience where couples could explore their fantasies without judgment after years of marriage. They wanted to reignite the spark and had stumbled upon this cruise while searching online for adventurous getaways. Lily had found the website late one night, and after some hesitation, they both agreed it was just what they needed. They booked the trip, packed their bags, and now they were finally here, ready to dive into a week of freedom and fun. That evening, they attended the welcome dinner in one of the ship's grand dining halls. The room was filled with couples dressed in their best, the atmosphere buzzing with anticipation. The ship's staff welcomed everyone with champagne and smiles, making sure the guests felt at ease. As they settled at their table, another couple joined them. Mark and Sophie Williams introduced themselves with warm smiles. Mark was a tall, charming man with an easy laugh, and Sophie was a lively artist with bright eyes and a friendly demeanor. The two couples instantly hit it off, sharing stories over cocktails. Mark and Sophie had been on the cruise before and shared their experiences, giving Ethan and Lily tips on what to do and see. They talked about the private parties, the beautiful ports they would visit, and the exciting activities planned for the week. The conversation flowed effortlessly, and it felt like they had been friends for years. By the end of the evening, Ethan and Lily felt more comfortable, their initial nerves melting away. They looked forward to the adventures that awaited them on this tropical escape, unaware of the dark turn their vacation would soon take. By the third day, March 3rd, 2010, Ethan and Lily had become inseparable from Mark and Sophie. They attended private parties together, where couples mingled freely and explored their desires. The four of them joined in, finding excitement in the new experiences and secretive spots on the ship. But not everything was perfect. Ethan started to notice that Mark was very possessive of Sophie. Mark always wanted to know where she was and who she was with. It made Ethan a bit uncomfortable at the same time. Lily felt uneasy about the attention Mark was giving her. He often complimented her and found excuses to be close to her, which Lily found unsettling. While the couples tried to enjoy the parties and intimate encounters, these tensions simmered under the surface. Ethan and Lily talked about it privately, wondering if they should distance themselves from Mark and Sophie. However, they decided to stay close for now, hoping things would get better. What they didn't know was that someone else was watching them. A guest who admired Sophie had been following their movements, feeling jealous and angry. This person stayed hidden, keeping an eye on Mark, Sophie, Ethan and Lily. On the evening of March 4th, 2010, the ship hosted a grand masked ball. Everyone wore masks and elegant outfits, adding a sense of mystery to the night. The couples danced and enjoyed the music, but the tensions from the previous days lingered. As the night progressed, an argument broke out between Mark and Ethan. Mark, upset and jealous, accused Ethan of spending too much time with Sophie. Ethan tried to stay calm, but the argument escalated. Witnesses later recalled seeing Mark storm off in anger, leaving Ethan looking visibly shaken. Sophie rushed to calm Ethan, but the atmosphere remained tense. The evening that started with excitement now felt heavy with unresolved issues. Meanwhile, the mysterious admirer of Sophie continued to watch them. Hidden among the other guests, this person observed every move, fueled by jealousy and a sense of possessiveness over Sophie. In the early hours of the morning on March 5, 2010, a crew member was making routine rounds when he stumbled upon a gruesome sight. On a secluded part of the deck, away from the usual hustle and bustle, lay Mark's body. He had been brutally stabbed multiple times. The crew member immediately alerted the captain, who swiftly locked down the ship to prevent anyone from leaving or tampering with potential evidence. The guests were informed of the tragic news later that morning. The once jubilant mood of the ship turned somber and fearful. Whispered conversations filled the dining halls and lounges as people speculated about what had happened. The sense of paradise was shattered, replaced by a lingering unease. On March 6, 2010, Detective Joan Johnson was flown in to join the ship at its next port. She was an experienced detective, known for her methodical approach. As soon as she arrived, she began her investigation by interviewing the people closest to Mark. Ethan was the first to be interviewed. He admitted to arguing with Mark the previous night, but firmly denied any involvement in his death. He explained that the argument was about Mark's possessiveness over Sophie and his unwelcome attention towards Lily. Ethan appeared shaken but cooperative, answering all of the detective's questions. Lily was next. She was visibly distraught, her eyes red from crying. She explained that she and Ethan had come on the cruise to save their marriage, hoping the experience would bring them closer. She insisted that neither she nor Ethan would ever harm Mark. Her distress seemed genuine, but Detective Johnson noted every detail, looking for any inconsistencies. Sophie was the last to be interviewed. Unlike Ethan and Lily, she seemed oddly calm. She spoke about her relationship with Mark, revealing cracks in their seemingly perfect facade. She admitted that Mark could be controlling, and that their marriage was far from perfect. Sophie's composure was unsettling, but she provided valuable insights into their relationship dynamics. As Detective Johnson continued her investigation, she examined the crime scene thoroughly, looking for any clues that might lead to the killer. The crew and other guests were also questioned, and the ship's security footage was reviewed. The investigation was just beginning, but the pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together. Detective Johnson knew it would take time to unravel the truth behind Mark's murder, but she was determined to find justice. By March 8, 2010, Detective Johnson had begun to uncover a web of deceit and hidden desires. Her investigation revealed that Mark had not been faithful to Sophie. Evidence surfaced showing that Mark had multiple lovers on board, including Lily. It all started innocently enough. During the welcome dinner when Mark and Lily first met, they bonded over shared interests and exchanged flirty glances when they thought no one was watching. As the days passed, Mark would find ways to be alone with Lily. taking advantage of moments when Ethan and Sophie were occupied. The allure of secrecy and the thrill of the forbidden led them to stolen kisses in hidden corners of the ship, and eventually, 2 passionate encounters in Mark's cabin. Ethan was devastated when he learned about the affair. He had believed that everything he and Lily did on the ship was a shared experience to strengthen their marriage. The revelation that Lily had been sneaking behind his back and having an affair with Mark without his knowledge was a crushing blow. He felt betrayed and humiliated, and it shook the foundation of his trust in Lily. Sophie's reaction was different. Her calm demeanor shattered as she confessed that she had known about Mark's indiscretions for some time. She admitted that she didn't care, because their marriage had been strained for years. Sophie had accepted Mark's behavior as part of their unconventional relationship, but it still hurt to see the extent of his betrayal. On March 10, 2010, a breakthrough in the case came when a passenger statement led Detective Johnson to a crucial piece of evidence. The passenger had seen a suspicious figure near Mark's cabin on the night of the murder. Following this lead, Johnson reviewed the ship's surveillance tapes. The footage showed a masked figure entering Mark's cabin late at night. The height and build of the figure matched Ethan's, adding to the suspicion against him. However, Detective Johnson wasn't convinced it was that simple. She knew that appearances could be deceiving, and that the case was more complex than it seemed. The masked figure moved quickly and purposefully, suggesting a premeditated action rather than a crime of passion. Johnson analyzed the figure's movements, looking for any distinctive traits that might help identify them. She also considered the possibility that the figure was someone else, disguised to look like Ethan. As the investigation continued, Johnson kept her focus on unraveling the truth. She knew that finding the real killer required looking beyond the obvious and delving deeper into the hidden lives of everyone involved. The affair between Mark and Lily, the strained marriage between Mark and Sophie, and the masked figure in the surveillance footage were all pieces of a puzzle that she was determined to solve. On March 12, 2010, a key piece of evidence surfaced. A crew member discovered a bloody knife hidden in a maintenance closet. The handle had fingerprints, and forensic analysis revealed they belonged to a passenger named David Collins, a 35-year-old artist who had been aboard the Tropical Escape. David Collins had been infatuated with Sophie for a long time. They had met during an art exhibition a year ago and had an affair. Their relationship was intense but secretive. Sophie kept David at a distance, but he was deeply obsessed with her. When Sophie went on the cruise with Mark, David followed, hoping to rekindle their romance. Detective Johnson brought David in for questioning. Under pressure, David confessed to killing Mark out of envy. He couldn't stand seeing Sophie with Mark and wanted to eliminate his rival. However, his confession contained a shocking twist. He claimed that Sophie was in on it. According to David, they had planned Mark's murder together, hoping to free Sophie from her controlling husband. David explained that Sophie had grown fond of Ethan and wanted him for herself. She saw Ethan as a new beginning and planned to have private sessions with him. However, Ethan had refused her advances, remaining loyal to Lily despite the affair with Mark. This refusal made Sophie and David see Ethan as an obstacle. During the search of David's cabin, the investigators found notes and sketches indicating that Ethan was their next target. David had drawn detailed plans for how they would approach Ethan and eliminate him, making it look like an accident. The notes revealed Sophie's desire to be with Ethan and her anger at his rejection. Detective Johnson confronted Sophie with this information. Sophie, now visibly shaken, denied being involved in Mark's murder. She insisted that David was acting alone, out of his obsession with her. However, the evidence against her was compelling, and her calm demeanor began to crack under the weight of the revelations. The trial for Mark's murder began on June 1st, 2010, in a crowded courtroom. The case had garnered significant media attention, turning the once private lives of those involved into a public spectacle. The courtroom was filled with reporters, spectators, and family members eager to see justice served. David Collins was charged with first-degree murder, and the prosecution was determined to prove his guilt beyond a shadow of a doubt. His confession, the fingerprints on the knife, and the detailed notes found in his cabin made a strong case against him. However, David's insistence that Sophie was complicit in the murder added a layer of complexity to the trial. Sophie was also under scrutiny, though she had not been formally charged. Her involvement was a topic of intense debate, with many questioning whether she had manipulated David into committing the crime, or if she was an innocent victim of his obsession. As the trial commenced, the prosecution presented its case methodically. They called witnesses who had seen the argument between Mark and Ethan, the subsequent altercation, and the masked figure entering Mark's cabin. They also presented the forensic evidence linking David to the murder weapon. David's defense team tried to paint a picture of a man driven to madness by unrequited love. They argued that his obsession with Sophie clouded his judgment and led him to commit a heinous act in a moment of emotional turmoil. David, however, remained adamant that Sophie had been involved. He described their affair in detail, recounting how they had met at an art exhibition and how Sophie had expressed her dissatisfaction with Mark. David testified that Sophie had confided in him about Mark's controlling nature and her desire to be free from him. He claimed that Sophie had suggested the idea of killing Mark and had helped plan the murder. According to David, Sophie had assured him that they would be together once Mark was out of the way. Sophie, on the other hand, denied any involvement. Her lawyers, a team of skilled and experienced defense attorneys, argued that David was a delusional man who had concocted a fantasy relationship with Sophie. They presented Sophie as a victim of David's obsession, someone who had been caught in a web of lies and deceit through no fault of her own. Throughout the trial, Sophie maintained her innocence. She admitted to having an affair with David, but insisted that it was purely physical, and that she had never intended for it to lead to murder. She described how David had become increasingly possessive and erratic, and how she had tried to distance herself from him. Sophie's lawyers highlighted her calm and cooperative demeanor during the investigation, arguing that she had nothing to hide. As the trial progressed, the focus shifted to the relationship between Ethan and Lily. Ethan took the stand, recounting the events of the cruise and the shock he felt upon discovering Lily's affair with Mark. He described the argument with Mark, his feelings of betrayal, and his attempts to save his marriage. Ethan's testimony painted a picture of a man caught in a nightmare, trying to navigate the complexities of infidelity, jealousy, and murder. Lily also testified, expressing deep remorse for her actions. She described how the affair had started, the guilt she felt, and her desire to make amends with Ethan. Lily's emotional testimony elicited sympathy from the jury, highlighting the personal toll the events had taken on her and Ethan's relationship. The prosecution then presented evidence of the plans David had made to target Ethan. They showed the detailed notes and sketches found in David's cabin, demonstrating his intent to harm Ethan after killing Mark. This evidence reinforced the prosecution's argument that David was a dangerous and unstable individual. In their closing arguments, the prosecution reiterated the overwhelming evidence against David. They emphasized his confession, the forensic evidence, and his clear intent to kill both Mark and Ethan. They argued that David's claims about Sophie were the delusions of a disturbed mind, and that there was no concrete evidence linking her to the murder. David's defense team, in their closing arguments, tried to sow doubt about Sophie's innocence. They pointed to inconsistencies in her statements and suggested that she had manipulated David to achieve her own ends. However, they struggled to counter the strong evidence against David himself. The jury deliberated for several days, carefully considering the evidence and testimonies. On June 15th, they returned a verdict. David Collins was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and tension, as the verdict brought some closure to the tragic events. Sophie, despite the cloud of suspicion, was not charged. Her lawyers had successfully created enough doubt about her involvement, and without concrete evidence, the prosecution could not proceed with charges against her. Sophie walked out of the courtroom a free woman, though her reputation was forever tarnished. Ethan and Lily's story took a different turn. The trial had been an emotional ordeal for both of them, forcing them to confront the deep fractures in their relationship. Ethan had been ready to divorce Lily, unable to forgive her for the affair and the subsequent chaos it had brought into their lives. However, Lily pleaded for another chance, expressing her remorse and willingness to make amends. They decided to attend therapy together, hoping to rebuild their relationship from the ground up. Therapy sessions were challenging, as they had to address the infidelity, the murder, and the emotional trauma they both endured. Slowly, they began to understand each other's perspectives and worked towards healing the wounds that had nearly torn them apart. Over time, Ethan and Lily found a new sense of closeness. They agreed that the events of the cruise were a once-in-a-lifetime ordeal that neither of them wished to repeat. The experience had forced them to confront their vulnerabilities and shortcomings, ultimately making their bond stronger. They vowed to communicate openly and honestly, recognizing that trust was the foundation of their renewed relationship. The tropical escape cruise, which had started as a promise of adventure and excitement, ended as a haunting memory for everyone involved. Mark's murder, David's obsession, Sophie's and Ethan and Lily's struggles were all part of a complex tapestry of human emotions and relationships. In the years that followed, the story of the tropical escape became a cautionary tale. It served as a reminder of the dangers of hidden desires and the consequences of deceit. For Ethan and Lily, it was a painful but transformative chapter in their lives, one that taught them the value of trust, forgiveness, and the enduring strength of love. As for Sophie, she faded into obscurity, Her life marked by the scandal, but free from the legal consequences. David spent the rest of his days in prison, haunted by his actions and the unfulfilled dreams of a life he had destroyed. The trial had brought some measure of justice, but the scars it left behind were a testament to the complexity of human nature and the unpredictable twists of fate. The only question people kept asking was, if indeed Sophie had a hand in this. And the fact remains that you and I might never know. So please, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of our true crime stories. We have many true crime stories of people who let their obsession become their undoing. Be sure to check them out.